Hey guys, thanks for checking out the channel. Tobin here with you. If you wouldn't mind, hit the subscribe button. The Tobin and Leroy Show is now streaming live on YouTube. If you guys want to dive into the silly sauce every single weekday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., do so. You guys can subscribe over there. Link is in the description. And check us on out, man. I appreciate the growing community over there. You guys have been great on this community over here. And the love is spreading all around. New Porpoise Pod with my guy Solana's coming out, by the way. You should look for that Friday morning. And a breakdown of all things off season. But big news today as the Miami Dolphins, not really surprisingly, fired Josh Boyer, their defensive coordinator who had been the holdover from the Brian Flores era. You know, they decided with what they liked from last year and keeping some continuity going. You remember the Dolphins in free agency basically kept their front seven all together with a bunch of free agency signings, and a lot of that stuff didn't pan out because of injuries and things like that. But the whole idea was just keep continuity, make it for a young, vibrant, offensive-minded head coach to keep as much of his focus on getting things right with Tua Tagovailoa and his star wide receivers in that offense. Have all the focus on that because he was already going to be tasked with running the organization. He was going to be tasked with running the plays, with calling the plays on offense, much to Tony Romo's surprise. And so you want to try and take a little bit off of his plate, right? So let's just keep it on over. Let's keep Josh Boyer in hold and see if that will work out for things. But, you know, ultimately, if you do that, you're hoping that things stay at least status quo or at least get better. And look, he had injuries to deal with. There's no doubt about that. So did Mike McDaniel. The offense had injuries to deal with. But you think about, you know, Emmanuel Ogbah, Brandon Jones, Byron Jones, that whole saga that was going on, Nick Needham, other depth guys on defense. So there was certainly a lot of blows, especially to that secondary. I mean, they really took a battering ram to that. With Ogbah, never really looked like himself this year after recapping him, and then they ended up going and getting Bradley Chubb. But, you know, I don't know if he did enough warranted to keep his job. I think certainly the defense played better in what was a team worst run of the season, you know? So it's like one of these things where we would probably look back, and I think the Dolphins fan would agree watching this, is like there were never really games that you felt were obviously one side's fault or the other. I think that you could always look at every game and say, this was a real critical play that the defense effed up, or this was a real critical play that the offense effed up, and it all had a hand in the loss. But I think that if you were to do, you know, pie chart on the last third of the season, you would say it was the offense. It wasn't necessarily the defense, but the problem is that you knew that you had injuries. You knew you had some things that were going on there, and the defense never really could bail them out in key situations up until, of course, you got to that last week to get yourself in the playoffs. And I certainly think that they came up with some monster plays against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, but they still that team still put up a lot of numbers, again, with a very depleted secondary that he had to deal with. I just think that for Mike McDaniel, it's okay for Mike McDaniel to want to bring in his guy and to look at this and say, you know, Josh Boyer, it was nice. It was a nice professional relationship. You know, appreciate everything there, except for that Chargers game. And just wanting to get somebody who you just feel more comfortable with. It's a little bit of a weird thing. Anybody who's worked in an office dynamic, you know, when new people come in and you're kind of an old head or an old, you know, keep over, it's an awkward dynamic. Not to compare like the media world to football, but, you know, I can certainly relate to going to different buildings, blending teams, all that type of stuff. And it can be a weird vibe. Not that those other people aren't awesome and not that you won't finally get there, but it does take time and sometimes it never does. And I think for Mike McDaniel's probably looking at a guy like Josh Boyer and be like, you know, it was okay. It could have been better. You know, I think that's the fair thing if you're Mike McDaniel. Be like, look, this guy was here. It was okay. Certainly had some things that went against him, but I feel like this could be better. I feel like the working relationship could be better. I feel like these players could be utilized. I feel like if you're Mike McDaniel and you look at all the chess pieces you have on offense and you look at your best way to utilize them all, and you like the results, the Dolphins are a top 10 offense. You look at the defense and you look at, I think everybody looks at this Dolphins defense and you see Wilkins and Phillips and Snowman and Sealer and Xavier Howard and all these guys and you look at them and you're like, I feel like this should be a little bit better because we all like the names here. We all feel like these guys are solid. We know that they can make big impact plays, but why are there so many gaffes on 3rd and long? Why are there so many mess ups in critical situations? And, we all know the infamous game where he's looking at Josh McDaniel, Josh Boyer, bro, get it effing fixed with all the blown plays in that game. And I think ultimately he's just looking at it and is just like, I feel like this could be a little bit better. And I think as a head coach, you're entitled to that. He did put out in his statement, he says, I am grateful for Josh's contribution this year throughout his tenure with the Dolphins. The defense made strides throughout the season. So coming to this decision was not easy, but ultimately I feel it is the best long-term interest of the Miami Dolphins and the continued growth of our players and team. So there you go. And for Josh Boyer, like a guy known for getting some key talent and unearthing some unknown gems. Cater Kahu was one of those. You got to give Boyer props to that because he was in between a rock and a hard place with this whole Byron Jones thing being out. But the whole high-priced cornerback thing, you think about where the identity of this team was and where it's going. It was built on the outside and those guys being able to shut things down and him being able to take some risks. I think right now you're looking at the growth of a potentially dominant front 4-5 guys that really could just get after it. And, maybe they just need to go at it with a different philosophy. And Vic Fangio is the big name that's out there, kind of the prize hog out there as far as defensive coordinators are concerned. I don't know why I made him a carnival animal. It's probably because I went to the South Florida Fair recently, and man, they look cute. I mean, those fat little pigs just running around. It just looked like what a delight. I'm sure their lives are miserable in those pens, but man, they look like they were having fun at the time. And man, do I love me some mini cows. Oh, what a delight. I'm jealous. So I got a buddy now. He's raising a farm in Minnesota, and he's got cows every day. I'm just like, what a delight. Those things just look just so beautiful to wake up to. I'm going off in a tangent in different ways. You did kind of get the vibe that Mike McDaniel was going in a different direction. If you guys listened to his press conference, didn't give like the biggest ring endorsement because he was asked about, the defense and Boyer, and he was very focused on how the players performed more so than anything else.
I was very, very proud of the defense, the coaching staff, and the players on how specifically the very end of the season. I think the last 3 regular season games in a place of adversity, they found their best self. I think I couldn't be prouder of yesterday specifically. With you're talking about 7 sacks and turnovers and just really aggressive play. So very, very proud of the way the defense finished the season.
So it was like very proud of the defense, not necessarily, not like singing the praises. And I felt like you got to listen to these press conferences, how general they can be with certain terms and how glowing they can be with the others. For example, the way they talked about Christian Wilkins at the press conference, very obvious. They want to do everything they can to sign Christian Wilkins. It's not even that difficult a decision. Of course they're going to. He's amazing. He deserves the money. He's one of the faces of their franchise. Of course, you're glowing in praise. And the guys that you want to skate around, you skate around with. That's why I think with the Tua thing, I don't want to make this a Tua-centric video, but it's like why with the Tua thing, why I think all the speculation is silly is I've heard generic Dolphins talk around this player. I feel like this is pretty cut and dry that they're going to bring him back. I don't think they're trying to be deceiving. This was him on if there were going to be any coaching staff changes just a few days ago.
Pretty early. I mean, I think 24 hours ago, we might have had a lead, maybe. And, one of the things that I've found from my experience in the National Football League is that it's very long, it's very emotional, and you're not always, you can lend yourself to living with regret if you make any sort of decisions emotionally. So we're going to go through the process, and you got to kind of let things simmer for really the entire coaching staff, just like you do with players, and have communication. But it's gonna take a minute, and we're just out of I'm just getting my feeling back in my in my hands from the cold winter Buffalo skies.
Yeah, well, it was literally like as soon as he thawed, and then they had Taco Tuesday and Hump Day, he was like, all right, now I'm ready to fire Josh Boyer. No Moyer to Josh Boyer. He is out. It's like, want to go through the whole process. Want to give it some time. Got to really think this one over. Oh, Fangs is going to interview at the Falcons? We need to get Boyer the hell out of here. Hit the bricks, Boyer. That's it. I do wonder what a firing Mike McDaniel is like. Can't picture it. I don't know if he's a beat around the bush guy or if he just gets right to it. I also do like the idea of old Fangs being in there and being in there with hip young Mike McDaniel. I feel like it's quite the clash of styles there that are going to be the coach. But I do feel like I feel like a guy of his experience does help a coach's staff. If that does happen, who knows? I mean, it may not. There's other people pursuing him. But I think that I will say, if you are a defensive coordinator, we saw this with Darrell Bevel, right? Like, he looks at the Jets and the Commanders, and he's like, I'm not going there. If you are a defensive coordinator and you're looking at the Dolphins, you're thinking, damn, that team was good last year. They got a lot of good pieces. So I feel like, and that Stephen Ross will spare no expense. So it feels like as long as it's a good fit with McDaniel and he's cool with it, they got the pieces that would attract the top candidates for this position. And that would be, and I think that's a really, really great thing to add to this, to really solidify it and for Mike McDaniel to get his guy. So, Boyer, it's nice knowing you, dude. Hit the bricks.